Last Thursday, of course, was the budget. And, some people, I suppose, optimistically went into the budget with hopes and aspirations. According to all reports, it was not unexpected. However, still a little bit disappointing, especially for some of the poorest in our community. Joining me on the program now, Senior Social Policy Analyst from the Social Policy and Parliamentary Unit of the Salvation Army, Paul Barber. Paul, kia ora. Good morning.
Yeah, kia ora.
Certainly disappointment would be the headline, I imagine, from your point of view, given the people that you work with week after week. Not a lot of good news for the poorest in our community in this year's budget.
No, that was definitely our message. In the lead up to this budget and for the months leading up to this budget, we've been calling for the government to bring hope and show compassion in this budget for those who are really struggling on the margins. And when you look at this, what was announced last week, it did not deliver enough hope.
Certainly, it seems that not only is the fence broken at the top of the cliff, but the ambulance at the bottom has a bit of a flat tyre. And in particular, I suppose when it comes down to basic levels, income for the poorest of the poor, when expenses are going up and incomes are fixed, that's certainly a bit of a stretch, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the experience of people right now seeking our services. Their incomes have been under pressure for some time. This is not something new. We've seen in the last 18 months, 2 years, increasing need and hardship, people really struggling to meet those day-to-day costs, turning to our services for assistance. And if I look at the budget, yesterday, one of the areas we've really wanted to focus on, and the government has recommitted to targets around child poverty and child poverty reduction. But when we look at what was actually presented in the budget, there's really forecasts basically that either child poverty will either increase, or at the very most optimistic will remain about the same as it is now. That's not a sign of hope.
Certainly, and whilst it is good that there is a cross-party agreement to make child poverty a priority, not just for one government and then the other government goes the other way. I mean, this is something that all parties have signed up to in this regard. It's more than rhetoric. It's more than saying, hey, we want to do what we can to reduce child poverty. There needs to be some policies. There needs to be a budget commitment to the sort of policies that are going to make a real difference in this area.
Yeah, we asked for a plausible plan. What was presented in the budget is an outline of some ideas of what might help, but because key areas, of course, incomes, and for those on the lowest incomes, the hundreds of thousands of families who rely on with children who rely on welfare support, they have been excluded. See for instance, they might get $4 a week extra through the changes announced in the budget, whereas some $1,000 a year, so $40 a fortnight. So that's the kind of that's not a recipe to reduce poverty. That's in fact a recipe to see poverty increase.
And not just the income, I suppose. Lots of other things on the fringes of the budget, with prescription charges coming back in now, not for children under a certain age. And for people on a community services card. So there's a little bit of ring fencing there, but for example, transport costs. There's no winter energy payment this year. There's a number of small areas which are going to make this winter a lot tougher for people already doing it tough.
Well, there is a winter energy payment this year.
Okay, there is. Okay.
But no increase in that amount, so it hasn't increased since it was introduced in 2018. So that in itself is a reduction of an effect in real costs for people if you look at living costs. Yes, and that range of those small areas, so what appears small in the budget around transport costs and prescription costs, around access to even the cuts in the school lunch programs, those all have sort of cumulative impacts, because they all make all those little things make a difference when your income's right on the margin. And one of the real goals for this government is about talking about reducing material hardship, which is about dealing with things like food hardship. It's about energy poverty and so on. And it's hard to see how the measures that were announced last week can make a meaningful difference. There's possibility there are some little things that help along the way, but that meaningful change is not there, and we'll be having some more conversations about what more can be done within the settings that have been established. But it's really disappointing that not more was announced there.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I missed the details on the winter energy payment. It's good at least that is continuing. But you've got, I suppose, these small incremental things that are all adding pressure. If there were one big thing which is a crushing effect on lower income families, that would be housing costs. And again, no details, no plan in terms of taking the pressure off people that can't afford to live in a healthy home.
Yeah, that's the issue that really surprised me in the budget, was that there was no further information about, or no real detail about what.
Just seem to have lost you there, Paul. Just, I suppose, moving on to what spending was there, and again, what you spend money on. I mean, it's true for me as for the government. What you spend money on says something about your priorities. Yes, tax cuts, and that will be helpful for some particularly middle-income families, but also a lot of money being spent on new prisons. Those sorts of things says something about people's priorities there.
Yes, the enormous expenditure that is planned on building a mega prison in the Waikato is, when you put that beside the very tiny amount that's being invested in reintegration and rehabilitation support for people on remand, it says something about your priorities as a government. It says that you're more interested in locking people up than you are in actually trying to help people, first of all, reintegrate into the community, not and reduce their likelihood of reoffending. We would feel there's a real imbalance in the priorities being around criminal justice, and it's hard to see there being room to move to improve that in the coming months and years.
Certainly, one of the key measures, I suppose, of people doing it tough is demand upon your services. And, very grateful, praise God for the work of the Salvation Army. But it looks like it is going to be a very busy winter for the Salvation Army crews supplying emergency accommodation, supplying food parcels, supplying support for people doing it tough.
That's the reality that we're looking at, as an increasing level of need and a tightness of resources. There is a general, one of the emphasis in of course, funding the tax cuts that have been introduced has been also real pressure on social spending, and that's means there's less support for people in communities, and also less support for the organisations that work in communities. And in a time when need is rising, that's not a great message to hear. And we hope and pray that things will not be as bad as we fear. And I think we ask people just to be beside those in need right now and do what you can. And also, I think, let's look around us and be open to the needs and share that thinking with those who are in our political leadership in our communities, because they need to know the realities. We try to bring that before Parliament. We try to speak on behalf of those we're working with. And we hope to be heard.
Certainly, and I think there's a broader responsibility, not just, oh gosh, this is the government's problem to fix, or even the Salvation Army, that proverbial ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, but actually for us as a community, and particularly for a faith community. If we've all got tax cuts, what do we do with that? Do we invest some of that into helping the poorest of the poor and to building the kingdom of God? I would say that's not a bad investment. If anybody has the money and capacity to do so. Paul, thank you so much for the work that you do. Sorry about a slightly dodgy internet connection, but thank you very much for being on the program today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and go well, everyone.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.